Yes, you are. All right, if I could have your attention in the media center, we're going to go ahead and get started with our post-race media availability. We're now joined by Daniel Hamrick, driver of the number 21 South Point Hotel and Casino Chevrolet, and Tyler Reddick, driver of the number 9 BurgerFi Chevrolet. If you do have a question, please raise your hand. We'll get you a wireless mic. Again, if you have a question. We'll start here with Wolfgang and work around to Kelly.
I got a comment on how nice this media center is, huh?
It is really nice. AC, too. Hey, just get here when you can.
And we're also joined by Cole Custer, driver of the 00 Haas Automation Ford.
Just one question for all three of you. What kind of approach you will enter the final race in Homestead? Is there any special strategy, preparation for the car, preparation for yourself?
Yeah, you try to bring your best piece at the best time of the year and do your best, right? You go there knowing that we're all on the even playing field, and feel fortunate that this 21 team's been in this situation last year, and thought we did everything we could to put ourselves in position to take the championship home, and just fell short with a mechanical failure. So we kicked off this campaign as a redemption tour, and we get a shot at that next week.
We'll go next to Kelly.
KellyCrandallRacer.com. Daniel, how much will next week be about redemption after really not even getting to race for the title for most of the race, and then one for Tyler?
Yeah, for me, you just hope you're going to find yourself in position to have another shot at like we did last year. Now I can confidently, obviously, say that we do have that shot, and it's a tough situation to be in. After the 10-point penalty we got after Kansas, it puts you a little bit on edge, and then we went to Texas and lost some points, and we knew we had to come here today and be as solid as we could and give ourselves a shot to just try to maximize our points as best we could, and that's what we did. That all leads to the thought of if we can get the Homestead, we feel like we got as good a shot of anybody, and having that taste in our mouth, have that taken away from us last year the way it was, makes us that much more hungry when we go there next week.
And Tyler, if somebody had told you 9 weeks ago you'd be the only JRM car represented at Homestead, what would you have said?
I've been surprised. I know we have the potential to get to Homestead all year long. We just, I guess we've just been getting our bugs out this year. Our regular season had moments of greatness, but never really seized it. We'd have speed, but something would happen. I'd wreck, hit the wall, something like that. But the playoffs have been more about what this team is truly about. We've done everything like we've needed to, and we've done a very good job of staying out of trouble and minimizing mistakes. But we've been lucky too. So as anything I've ever learned with racing, you can do everything right. You can be the fastest car. You can not make a single mistake all race long, but sometimes it's never hurts to just be a little lucky.
Go ahead.
Justin Schuler, Speedway Media. Cole, this question's for you. You're the only one locked in from your win earlier this round, and all race long we saw 3, even 4 guys trying to fight for the win, since quite a few of the guys were in a must-win situation. For you, mentally, how did you prepare for this race since you were already ready for Homestead?
Just like any other race, honestly. I mean, we just, even though we're locked in, I mean, we still wanted to win. I mean, I think we tried some things this weekend that didn't work, but I think we know, so we can come back next year and be better. But I think, I don't think we went in with a whole different mindset this race.
Go next to Jerry.
Jerry Jordan, KickingTheTires.net and PRN. For each of y'all, obviously everything re-racks next week, and it's the fastest of the 4. So how do you go in with that mentally, and which one of you thinks you're better than the other?
I mean, obviously we're sitting up here, we're race car drivers, right? So we all think we're better than the next one we're sitting next to. And, for us, I have so much confidence in my team. I talked about how we've been in that situation before, and knowing how we've risen to the occasion, not only the past year, but the past 2 years, for this group that I'm a part of at Richard Childress Racing. I think back to where these cars were at, how they drove when I first got in them 2 years ago. And I feel like anybody sit up here that's had a chance to drive them and told you that they were nowhere near where they needed to be. I can confidently sit here and tell you that it's the best race cars I've driven in a top 3 series over the last, 2 months probably. There's a lot to be said about that. Chevrolet, ECR, our aero department back at RCR, these crew chiefs are working hand in hand together, and they're giving us opportunity, and that makes me feel confident with my race team to go get the job done next week.
Yeah, fortunately for me, and Christopher Bell, we got to go test there over the summer. So I have an idea of, what me and Christopher had at the test. Homestead's a place where you can run the top, and that's something that I've had success at before in the past. We know how good Cole was last year there. He made us all look really bad. He smoked everybody in that race, and even with Daniel's misfortune, I think they had a lot of speed in that race, if I recall. So it's not going to be a walk in the park. The other three guys that we'll be competing against are very good teams, and obviously they've earned the right to be there at Homestead. So it's going to be a fight. It's going to be a lot of fun. I could think of no better place than Homestead, Miami for this championship to come down to.
Yeah, I mean, we know everybody in this top 4 is going to be fast when we get there. So you got to do your homework before you get there, and we have a really good baseline to go off of. But
You think?
Yeah,
maybe.
But,
a 25 or 13 seconds over second.
But we're going to have to find a way to make it as good or better because things are going to change a little bit.
He's not that bad.
We'll find out.
Chris Knight, Catchfence.com. Yeah, Cole, you don't have that car no more for the Homestead. So, are you guys starting over, or do you guys feel like that you still have a one-up on the field with the setup in the car?
No, I mean, all our cars at Stewart Haas, I mean, we build fantastic cars. So I don't, I could take any single car out of our fleet and I could take this car this weekend. I think it would be just as good as the car we're taking to Homestead. But, I think the tires are going to be a little bit different. I think it's a different left side tire. We have the flange fit bodies this year, so that's a little bit different. So it's just, you got to account for those things and make sure that, you're adjusting and making your car as good as it can be.
Saw the race at Texas be aggressive there in the closing laps, especially between you guys. And it was aggressive today, too, with a lot on the line. Is it the potential that you guys could be aggressive next weekend with all on line, or do you have to save your car for the end?
I mean, the guy that's going to win the championship is the one that runs pitches all the laps, right? You gotta get to the end of that race. So in a sense, you have to save your car, but these flange fit bodies are pretty durable. Trust me, I know I've slapped the wall out this year. All the guys at the shop reminded me of that too. These cars take a good beating, and fortunately, that'll make it easier around the top and with less regard to body damage.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's it's a matter of going there, and I think back to the race last year after we had our issues, how Elliott Sadler looked like he was the guy to beat all night, and as the lights come on, sun goes down, a lot of change happens with that racetrack really quick and really rapid. So it's a matter of staying on top of that. Fortunately, I think for all of us, we've been there enough times now to know kind of the direction the racetrack does go, and all of a sudden the 9 showed up at the end of the race on the last run when it mattered the most, and wore everybody out on the championship side of things last year. So we got to try to make sure we put ourselves in position to be there at the end, and that's what's going to come down to.
I was just going to follow up on the flange fit body cars. I guess obviously you like them. Do you guys like the setups the way they put them together this year after a full season?
Oh, I think it's single-handedly one of the best things that's ever happened, especially to the Xfinity Series. Not only from a cost side of it, but from a race team management of knowing that if we touch the wall, which a lot of us uncharacteristically do every single race on the straightaway at some point or just barely bump it. If you did that in the past, you're replacing the whole right side just to get everything fit back to template and back to scan. So now with the tolerances as close as they are and everybody knows they got to just abide by that and bolt the parts together, it's an incredible thing. I know I think back to me super late model racing. I mean, you could just hang a body, a surface plate in the backyard of your shop if you wanted to, and quite frankly, I feel like you can do kind of the same thing here. Obviously, everybody has their little things you mess with more than others, but for the most part, the durability side of it and how we can race and be as an aggressive, it makes for better racing because of the flange fit body, and I think it's something that has honestly brought the whole field closer. The dominance that we've seen out of some organizations over the past, I think that was a key to us making leaps and bounds this year with our program and working hard to get the rest of it what we need to do, and a lot of it's to attest to the flange fit body.
Bob?
Bob Hawkers, ESPN. Tyler, you haven't had the season overall that these other guys have had. How do you approach Homestead, considering what you're probably maybe coming off 3 of your better races and just having performed as well in the playoffs as you have?
Well, I think of Homestead, and I think of a 1.5 mile wore-out track. Wore-out tracks, 1.5 miles, or something where we've had a lot of speed at this year, and we've been able to find speed even if things haven't gone our way. It just kind of falls into my background, what I grew up doing. I just feel really comfortable. And we got to test there, I believe in August, and we had a good test there. So I feel really good about Homestead, more so than any track this year, honestly. I'm sure we'll get there, and everyone's going to be really, really tough. But me personally, confidence-wise, it literally from Daytona on, like, well, if we get to Homestead, I think, we have a really good shot there based off of how I've ran there in the past and how much fun I just have at that track.
Matt.
Matt Weaver, Auto Week. This is for Daniel. Apologies if you've been asked already, but familiar situation for you in the sense that last year, similar spot, still looking for the first win, but in the championship race. Do you feel like you're any sort of underdog despite the familiarity?
I don't think so. I feel like everybody has seen our results. Yeah, we haven't checked the win box, but our results from second, I think I was just reminded it's our 12th top 3 finish of the year. That's crazy to think about somewhere there we couldn't win a race. But on the flip side of that's something that we didn't have going for us last year. We didn't have the speed to even contend, and we haven't had things fall our way to win races this year. But we've had substantial more amount of speed. I can look at the data reports every Sunday or Monday whenever I get them, and our average place, our laps led, our stage wins, everything we've done is just elevated to a different level this year. And because of that, I think about the speed and the execution that we had until we didn't have it at Homestead last year. We did that with a race car that I didn't feel like, from a performance side, we were where we needed to be, and we got down there and almost surprised everybody. And these race cars I'm driving now are substantially better. And because of that, because of the gains we've made, it makes me extremely optimistic going to Homestead. And it's a racetrack that all racers love. So I feel like we've recently done some things, our race cars, over the last 2 to 3 weeks specifically, that have allowed us to have maneuverability throughout races to be able to get around the top. And I think back to Kansas, it was the first time I've ever been able to run the wall and feel efficient in doing it. And at some point, that's where you're going to be next week, and I feel good about it.
Kathy Brown, Penny Outside the Box. This question is for each of you. With the new configuration here at Phoenix, how pleased are you with the configuration, and was it what you expected it to be?
I thought the restarts were not as chaotic as I expect them to be. The first couple, everyone kind of drove in there and slid up into each other, it seemed like. But it went better than I expected it to. Not in a bad way. I just expected more wrecks on the first lap of the race, or the first lap after a restart. But it kind of is expected. It's the same track essentially. Once you get going, the start-finish line's just moved. So if you ever get put in a spot or in a restart, it just changes things up a little bit. But I enjoy the pit road. I think pit road's great. It's wide. You can play around with your pit road speed a little bit, try and gain some speed, or even on accidentally, you can put yourself in a bad spot in speed as well. So I like it a lot. I've been walking around a little bit, get familiar with pit road this weekend, and I really like what they've done with the garages, the fan zone, everything. I'm a big fan of it.
Bob.
Bob Hucker, CSPN. Daniel, what was your philosophy? There's a lot of talk on TV and stuff. If you can win this race, you didn't need to win, but if you win it, you can knock Bell out of going to Homestead. Do you think about that much, or is this not about knocking people out as much as just performing yourself on the given day?
I mean, in all honesty, I feel like from the time we got here and unloaded through practice, it was a matter of execution, right? Like how to build the best race car we could build, how to make it the best we can make it in practice to give ourselves a shot to even be put in that situation. And as Danny Stockman made adjustments throughout the day, the 21 car got exceptionally better every single stop. And then we find ourselves in a situation where, okay, they made me aware of the 20 situation of where the 9 was at and what we needed to do to get ourselves to Homestead. And we honestly took off a lot better balance-wise from what I had early in the race, and that gave us a shot to go run with the 20. And thought on short runs I may have had a little something for him, but honestly he was kind of lights out. That race team was incredible here from the time we unloaded all week, and I was happy with the progress we made to give ourselves a shot. Obviously, I'll speak for all of us and say that we know that 20 is going to be as tough as anybody when we get to Homestead, and it had been great, right, to be able to punch our ticket, not only to keep somebody out, but just for our team to win a race. But the cards fell the way they fell, and we still have a shot at it to go do our jobs next week.
Are there any final questions for our championship contenders? All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Good luck next weekend.
Thank you.
All right, if I could have your attention in the media center, we can continue with our post-race media availability. We're now joined with the race-winning team, Christopher Bell, driver of the number 20 GameStop Just Cause Ford Toyota, crew chief Jason Ratcliffe, and executive vice president of Xfinity Series and Development at Joe Gibbs Racing, Steve D'Souza. If you do have a question, please raise your hand. We'll get you a wireless mic. We'll start here and work our way in the back.
Christopher Bell, Justin Schuler, Speedway Media. First off, congratulations on getting to Homestead with the win. On the restarts, you had quite a few having that experience, having the decision to go either high side or low side. Even though the track configuration hasn't really changed, the start-finish line moving obviously probably played a mental game. Did you see a kind of advantage of choosing the inside or the outside at all?
Honestly, I just left that up to my spotter and crew chief. It's a lot easier for me if I just say, hey, what do I do? And they told me to pick the bottom, so I did. I think the advantage of being on the bottom, though, was you could shortcut the racetrack as much as you needed to. And then whenever you got into turn one, if this situation would have arose, I could have just drove in there and slid up into him and be on the offense instead of the defense. So, yeah, just being on the bottom. And thankfully I didn't have to do that, and there weren't any late race yellows. But the big advantage I had was my car was not loose in at all, so I could attack turn one as hard as I needed to get myself clear, and that was ultimately what got me in clean air.
Matt Weaver with Auto Week. One for Bell first to your left, and one to Jason afterwards. For you, Christopher, how hard was it not to get suckered in when you were racing the 22 and that got kind of
I don't know if you were listening to my radio or not.
I was.
Oh yeah, I was full suckered in. Luckily, I have Jason and Tony Hirschman yelling at me, and that's I told him that right before I got in the car, and that's what I've been telling him for I don't know, at least the last couple days. I just said, I need someone yelling at me, and I feel like I do a really good job managing the first half of the race, but especially once you get to the end of stage 2, this week you have still over half the race left. But to me, at the end of stage 2, I start getting amped up. The 22 is racing me like he does every single week, and I got frustrated, and I was over it. But those guys didn't let me lose my head, and just said let him go, and we had the best pit crew on pit road, and got us out in front of him, so I didn't have to deal with him anyway.
Yeah, on that note, Jason, does it come natural for you to have to yell at your driver?
No. Well, I don't know. I have worked with Kyle Busch, so I love him. So just so you know that. No, it doesn't. I let Tony do that. He does a good job of managing it, and he's talking in my left ear, and I'm listening to Christopher in my right ear. So I can't see the whole racetrack. Tony can see what's going on, but I'm definitely in Tony's left ear saying, hey man, we gotta, stop this before it gets out of control. So, we had a moment like that today, but everyone did a good job of handling it, and Christopher did a good job of managing it, thankfully. And, like he said, the pit crew got us out front, and it wasn't a big deal in the end.
Off topic for you two, Jason. There's been a lot of talk this week about the storylines of the sport off the track concerning what goes on in the shop, penalties. The word cheating is thrown around a lot. Do you feel like crew chiefs and teams are sometimes unfairly vilified because they don't totally understand what goes on when cars aren't on the track? Kind of a complicated question, I know, but...
You're going to have to ask that again.
Yeah.
What now?
So obviously, let's say with the Forest situation this past week, people throw the word cheat around a lot. And we're talking about things that are sometimes fractions of a fraction of an inch.
Yep.
And I think sometimes, just my opinion, I feel like it's from a lack of education from fans who don't understand that competition takes place off the track as well as on it.
Sure.
So I'm just curious what your perspective is as a crew chief and educating fans what goes on when cars are not racing on the track.
Well, I think no different than any other sport. Unfortunately, every other sport, they deal with their penalties immediately, most of them. If a guy gets a holding call, it's immediately a penalty, and they don't talk about it on Monday and Tuesday. So for this sport, we talk about it on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, and so I think sometimes it gets blown out of proportion. You work hard, to try to find every advantage you can. If you don't, you shouldn't be doing this. is my opinion. But, you know, at the same time, you got to be smart, and NASCAR has rules in place, and I'm glad they do. Otherwise, it would get out of control. But I think I have a different perspective, and that is, you know, the 4-car, to me, okay, big deal. But, you know, he took that risk and he got caught, and he's going to have to pay the consequences. So if you're going to do it, fine. You're not going to be the only one doing it, I can promise you that. But if you get caught, then, hey, keep your chin up, keep digging. So that's the way I look at it. To me, it's not a huge deal. Again, everyone's trying to find an advantage where they can. It's a tough sport, and you got to search everywhere you can to get it. And, you know, Rodney's a great crew chief. He'll win a lot of races. He'll keep winning a lot of races. He's got great race cars, and I'm pretty sure sitting right here that the 4-car, you know, I don't know exactly what they were doing, but on any given day, you can probably find something like that on every car out there. So I'll leave it at that.
We'll go next to Wolfgang and then to Bob.
I have 3 questions, okay? Wolfgang Monser from Germany, Rennsport Press Agency. First of all, congratulations for all of you. I have 2 questions for Jason Radcliffe and one for Christopher Bell. When Christopher had to start from the end of the rear of the grid, personally, did you get a panic attack?
Well, yeah, I do, actually, especially in this situation. You know, knowing what was at stake today, knowing that we needed a win to move on. And it's been a great season for us. I mean, if it had been a mediocre season, you know, we would be probably coming here with a different approach. But it's just been an awesome season. A lot of people have worked extremely hard, and we need to get to Homestead. So for me, to put him in that situation and put that pressure on him, it's tough. We've been in that situation a few times this year. Obviously not in these circumstances where we had to win, but he does a great job, you know, of managing that and methodically working his way to the front, just like we saw today. So I wasn't concerned about him. I just, you know, for me, I hate putting him in that spot and asking him to work any harder than he already has to.
And the second question, I think when the driver is starting from the end of the grid instead of front of the grid, you have a different strategy. Can you give some more details about your strategy?
Well, the way the cautions fell today, you know, the strategy was pretty straightforward. You know, I felt like in the first stage, if we could make up the majority of that track position, I knew our pit crew was good for a couple spots on pit road, and then from there, the toughest part is, you know, adjusting the car because it's going to handle differently when you're driving from 40th to 10th than it is once you get up into the top 5. So I felt like our adjustments were right on today. Maybe the magnitude of the adjustment wasn't quite where it needed to be, but directionally we did good, and he did a good job. And again, our pit crew was second to none. I mean, they rocked today. And thankfully, to his qualifying effort last week, we had the best pit box.
And the third question for Christopher, I think immediately after the race, you said to the interviewer you had a very fast car. Nevertheless, coming from the end of the grid, you have to deal with traffic. Can you give some information? How was the traffic situation?
Yeah, the biggest thing for me is, you know, just my biggest problem whenever I started NASCAR racing was beating myself, and I still am very guilty of that. But whenever you start in the back, especially from lap 1, you have to realize that you're going to get a lot of opportunities to pass cars without actually passing them on the racetrack. So whenever I think I got to 10th on the first stage, and I'll be honest, I stalled out around 15th or 14th. I quit going forward, and at that point I got a little bit nervous, but you know, I knew that it was only lap 45, and then my pit crew gained me a couple more spots, and then basically the same thing happened again. You know, I got to, I don't remember what it was, 4th at the end of stage 2, and my pit crew got me 2 more spots, and then next thing you know, I'm out front. So for me, going through traffic is you just have to take advantage of your strengths, and this week our pit crew was a huge strength. So hopefully that'll continue next week.
Bob Hawkers, ESPN. Christopher, do you feel like going through this experience at all of having kind of your back against the wall and performing and winning helps you going into next week, or was you look so calm? Maybe it wasn't a big deal that what you did today going into next week.
I'll be honest, Bob. After Kansas and Texas, I just kind of accepted the fact that we might be eliminated, and from that point, once I accepted that, I sat back and looked at the season that we had, and we won 6 races. And whenever I won the 4th race, I was really happy and pretty much called the season. We were pretty much just over halfway, but it was a successful year. And then we've just been able to win some more races. And so I guess the biggest thing for me is that I accepted that we might not be going to Homestead, and knew that we would have really fast race cars for the last 2 races, and just tried to execute and not beat myself. And, I just get to drive really fast race cars. So that's why I'm able to win races. And, it was more so the team coming through than me this weekend. With, like you said, our backs are against the wall, and they show up here with arguably one of our fastest race cars we've brought to the racetrack all weekend or all year. So that was, that's why we got the results that we did today.
You accepted the chance that you could finish 4th in the points after next week, or is next week a totally different story?
Yeah, I mean, that's just the that's just the nature of the beast.
So I guess the question is, do you go into next week with a much different feeling of pressure? Do you go in next week with a much different feeling of pressure than you did this week?
Well, I guess my best answer to that is I guess the 22 was in a must-win. But other than that, I gave 6 other guys a huge advantage to knock me out, and they didn't. So now nobody has an advantage going into next week. So I'm smiling about that.
Go next to Jerry, then Chris, and work our way to the middle.
Jerry Jordan, Kicking the Tires on NPR, and I wanted to ask you about Homestead as well. The momentum of your must-win situation here, and the happiness that you're feeling up there after kind of, as you said, riding it off. Can you take that into Homestead, knowing that everything's reset? It's flat out man versus man versus man versus man going for the championship next week.
Yeah, it's I don't know if you can take any momentum there. The 00 has, they're licking their chops, right? They won by 15 or something seconds last year, so I'm sure they're feeling good going into it. But we saw with the Cup deal, Jimmy Johnson won his championship because a couple guys beat themselves and took each other out, and he was just at the right spot at the right time, and he was definitely not the best out of the 4. So that's what we're gonna have to do next week is just if we are the best car, try not to beat yourself, and if we're not the best car, just wait for the opportunity for that last pit stop, and you never know when the last restart's gonna come. So I've been in the Final 4 now 3 years out of my 3 full-time years in the NASCAR deal, and thankfully Steve D'Souza and Tyler Gibbs back there and all the guys at Toyota gave me the opportunity to run for the Owners' Championship last year in the Xfinity Series. So I've kind of lived it a little bit, and even in the Xfinity car being in that Owners' Final 4. So I know a little bit of what's going on, and I know that Jason's going to bring a really fast race car. So yeah, I'm excited, and momentum-wise, who knows, but I know I'm going to have a good piece.
Being a flat track also, does that help you with your background?
Not really. I seem to excel more on the bank tracks, I would say, but definitely Homestead is really slick, and I really enjoy slick racetracks, so I think that plays more into my background. It's a place where you can move around. The top has a lot of speed at times, so that might be good, but ultimately the 00 beat everybody in the middle last year, so we're going to have to make sure that we're good everywhere.
Chris Knight, GetFence.com. Christopher, kind of touching on Homestead again, too. Last year, you fought yourself a championship in the Truck Series with Kyle Busch Motorsports, and you kind of knew what you were doing mentally and physically leading up into that routine. As you approach it again, knowing what you did last year worked, can you do the same thing 2 years in a row?
I hope so. Homestead is just, it's a toss-up. I could get a flat tire lap 1 and be done, or I could get a flat tire lap 199 and be done. So the only thing that we can do is go out there and control what we can control and make sure that I don't beat myself, I don't psych myself out. Like you said, try and get my head right going into it. And I was really proud of myself going into this weekend. Just kind of, I don't know, I felt like I treated it like any other race, and made the most out of the weekend, and Jason brought a really fast race car. So I think we just go into next week with the same mentality that we did this week. No, not really. I say it time and time again. We're all race car drivers, and we race hard and want to win, if it's rental go-karts or for an Xfinity Series championship or a Cup Series championship. So there's nothing really that I can do on my part except not get psyched out. And then, so, you just got to go in there and do your best. So I do that every time I get behind the wheel of any race car.
We'll go to Dustin and then to Reed.
Dustin Long, NBC Sports. Christopher, you certainly had a lot of pressure-packed situations this year, and I'm just curious, how did today's situation compare to, for example, holding off Brad late at New Hampshire, holding off Kyle at Kentucky, which were seemed to be seminal moments for you? How did those? Can you give me a sense of what the pressure was like? How today compared to those? Was today more? Was today less than those situations?
I don't know. I guess there was definitely more on the line, so that means a little bit more pressure. But I feel like, my mentors have just done such a good job of raising me throughout my young racing career and preparing me for moments like this. And, I put so much pressure on myself for really any racing that we go do. And whenever I line up for the Chili Bowl heat race, I'm literally throwing up, and that's the most nervous, most pressure I feel of any race, just because what that race means to me. So today was nothing compared to that Chili Bowl heat race. But I think just being in pressure situations throughout my career, the Chili Bowl, the Knoxville Nationals, the Kings Royal, all those big events, just the more you do it, the better you get. So the more pressure situations you're in, the better that you can prepare yourself for the next one. So hopefully this one prepares me anyway pretty well for next week.
And I want to follow up on one thing. You talked about accepting the potential of not advancing. I think some people would say is you wouldn't want to say that or visualize or think like that because it puts that thought into your mind. So why that approach? And can you further explain what do you mean by accepting? Is it just more of, hey, this could happen, or what more went into that process? Because I think some people would kind of almost say that maybe it's almost a little defeatism.
Well, for me, I just I have a problem of beating myself. So if I sit here and say, hey, I have to win, my season's on the line, then I'm more likely to beat myself. And, we've won 6 races before today, and that was a great year. And whenever I go into a season, my 2 goals are to win races and compete for the championship. And we won races, and we competed for the championship all the way up until stuff outside of our control had happened. So, it was still a successful season in my standards. And but man, I'm happy that I'm still alive.
Reed.
Reed Spencer with NASCAR Wire for Jason. What was the inspection issue, and how did starting from the rear affect your approach to the race and change anything in terms of the way you were thinking about it?
So best I can tell, when we were doing a restart practice yesterday, we made a couple passes through the dog leg. So between practices, I did notice, we get pictures during practice, and I noticed in the second practice the splitter looked up. And we did get some damage on the left front after that first practice from restart attempts, which is fine. I mean, if you don't have it in practice, you're going to have it during the race, right? So in the scan, the nose was just high. It showed red, and we worked on it as much as we could. I mean, there's not a lot of braces and supports up there that you can push on. and we just couldn't get it. You know, we kept working at it, and it's a tough thing to measure. And finally, well, two things: it's tough to measure, and you're on the clock. So obviously, your goal is just get it fixed and get out there so we can qualify. So once we couldn't make it to qualify, then you have enough time to go back and do what you need to do. And as far as, it definitely changed our approach. I mean, our hope was to come in here and sit on the pole and start from the front. That would have been a lot easier, I think. But, you know, I mean, you deal with that. I mean, every week you have to be prepared. You don't know. You don't know what you're going to fight week in and week out, and you do your best to prepare for it. And in this situation, you know, we come here next year, we're going to fight the same racetrack, and we'll just be prepared for it. We'll know that, hey, in between practices, we got to make sure that we look at this and we do what we need to do before qualifying inspection so that we don't get ourselves in this situation again. This track is unique. We typically don't fight that, but I think it's just because of the shape of the racetrack.
And there's a question in the back.
Dominic Aragona with the Racing Experts for Christopher. When you look back at this race at whatever point in time, what's going to stick out the most to you about it?
Just how fast that race car was. How really the whole weekend. I don't know if I've ever had a NASCAR weekend where we unload and we're just that fast. I mean, looking at the lap times, man, it was just, I went out there and I'm pretty sure I went top of the board in the first practice, but yet each lap was faster than the competition. So that's what's going to stick out to me the most was how good of a race car that these guys brought.
What a Wolfgang.
One question for Mr. De Sousa. Is this correct? Yeah, thank you. Over in Europe, the top teams, regardless open wheel, touring cars, sports cars, when it comes to the decision or to a final race and a fight for the championship, they employ mental coaches for the drivers to go extremely positive, motivated into the last race. Do you have something similar in your race operation?
Well, obviously we have Coach, and he sets a pretty high standard. And you know, one of the things that he says a lot and teaches a lot is it's all about preparation and it's all about people. And so when we do have some of the younger drivers comes in, we try and pair them up the best we can. In this case, it was Jason. He's got a lot of experience. He's got a great operation. His group of guys are really strong. And he's helped Christopher come along in a lot of different areas, I think, in the maturity side, teaching him how to race. I think a week or two, Christopher said, I either win or crash a lot. And I think today was a great example of his maturity. You know, he had to lay off the 22. He did that, you know, realized what he was doing and went forward. So, you know, he's learning a lot. He's a great race car driver. And I think guys like Jason around him, and then Tony Hirschman, his spotter, also did an awesome job with him, as kind of keeping his eyes on him and coaching him as we went. So, you know, there's a group of guys that we try and place around all of our drivers when they're in this series or with us in the younger ages to try and help them as much as we can.
All right. Well, we know you have a lot to prepare for going into next weekend. So thank you all for joining us. Congratulations.
Thank you, Jason.